glad that that's what you take away from it, because like I've spent a lot of time in my life like kind of, you know, agonizing over this stuff, you know, like, because it is a really competitive world, and there's a lot of people that would have you believe that, like, you know, like you got to be making the best sounding stuff. Like if your stuff's not going to get on the radio, then like you're wasting your time, kind of thing. Like there's that weird like cutthroat nature about things. So yeah, and I got wrapped up in that for a long time, and letting go of that and embracing that, like, you know, just finding a community and helping them with their artwork is like the coolest thing you can do. And like if you take care of the community will take care of you, hopefully, you know. So I would always prioritize that over anything else, for sure.
What's up, everybody? It's the Poorly Edited Podcast, the show where we put a spotlight on some of the most creative minds we can find. I'm Chandler Davis. We're coming at you live from WXLV The X. We got Josh Brennan on the camera.
My name's Coffee Guy.
My name's Patrick Louie.
We're very excited for today's episode because we have a very special guest on.
Back to back to back.
Back to back to back.
Been a fun run.
Yeah. It's been crazy. We got Ryan Ellery in the house, sound engineer, master. I don't know.
Legend.
Legend. That's a better one. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic.
Thanks for taking some time out of your day to talk to us.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You sound very busy.
I'm in a little bit of a lull right now because I'm not going on that Australia tour that MJ's on, but I am going on that Grad Life tour when they get back. Yeah, so I have like a small little kind of week to get ready for all that stuff.
That Australia tour with a 24-hour flight to get there.
Ooh.
Which is
awful. I'm not really that jealous of missing out on that part of it, for sure.
The most I've done is 5 hours, and that was awful.
Yeah,
I've done over 11, I think, and that was pretty. I can't imagine twice that amount, though. That seems unbearable.
Was that what the deal breaker was for you to go to Australia? Or you just
no, it was more so. I think with a tour like that, you kind of have to, with budget and everything like that, you can't always bring like a front of house and all that. And we just got done doing that Hobo Johnson run when that was getting booked, and I was foreseeing that I'd want a little bit longer of a break before hitting the road again for like a trip like that. So I kind of opted out of that one.
I feel that, yeah, especially because it was going to be such a long one. It was probably a good one to sit out, I guess.
Yeah, maybe I'm just like being a whiny little boy, but like, so, you know, it's great. You can fly across the country in like 6 hours or whatever, and that's amazing. You know, but like you're still like in an awful seat for 6 hours, and it's really loud, and it's like totally uncomfortable, and I hate it. I hate flying.
I love flying.
It's cool. Like I said, you know, that's what I mean. I'm probably just being, you know.
It was sweet when it was new. It was like a marvel of technology. And then like,
you remember that?
You were around.
Yeah, I was around. I remember back in the day.
Yeah, planes are overrated.
And then capitalism took hold and started shoving as many people in as possible, so they could get as much money as possible out of plane tickets.
You hate to see it.
Yeah. Now it sucks. Back in my day, back in Pan Am, you should have seen it.
Ryan.
Yeah.
We have a lot of questions for you because I think that, and you know, we talked to you briefly after your show. We went to see with Mom Jeans and Prince Daddy the Hyena Mover Shaker when you guys were out in PA in Bethlehem. And I remember telling you that we wanted to have you on the show eventually because, you know, I felt like a lot of times the job that you do for so many of these bands is something that is so easy to not realize the importance of as like an average listener, you know, the role that you play in bringing that music to life that everybody loves. And I think it's really cool to be able to get down and sit down with you and talk about some of that and how you bring that to life, you know?
It's also really interesting because we've had a number of engineers on at this point, and we're not running out of things to talk about. So it's almost like surprisingly a diverse kind of topic to talk about, similar to just bands in general. That's not really something I was expecting.
I think a lot of people arrive to their own conclusions about things in like their own kind of unique way. So I imagine it does stay a fresh topic, which is nice. I think that's why there's a lot to learn from talking to other people who do the same profession as you as well and all that. It's a lot of different varying approaches to things. So yeah, I could see how it would stay more engaging.
Especially since it's like, I mean, I'd consider it an art. So like, I mean, any two artists you could compare to each other and be totally different stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think my biggest question to start was becoming a recording engineer, was that always a goal that you had, or is it kind of a byproduct of necessity, playing in bands and stuff, that you kind of fell in love with and realized you wanted to pursue more?
Yeah, it kind of is the latter, because I got into music when I was really young. I started playing guitar when I was like 11, and I was never really good at school. Mm-hmm. So I kind of I knew that I really enjoyed music, but music as a career seemed really ambiguous and not attainable. And I started recording in a really rudimentary way when I was late middle school, because my brother was a drummer. So I would record us playing together. And my dad was actually the one who let me know that once I started going through high school and stuff like that, and I was still recording just kind of recreationally. But my dad was the one who let me know that that's an actual career that people have, which I was completely unaware of at the time. And I really had no sort of idea of what my future was going to look like. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started taking community college classes while I was still in high school, and right when I got out of high school, on recording and engineering and all that. And I did that for about a semester. And that just kind of jump started the obsession with it after that. So at first it was just out of I could kind of do this, and it would be a way to potentially make a living in my life. Cause there was a lot of pressure when I was in high school and stuff like that. Cause I went to a high school where pretty much everybody went to 4-year colleges as soon as they graduated. Yeah. So there's this kind of pressure of what are you going to do with your life thing? So that was the easiest thing I could materialize and grab and be okay, maybe I'll do this. But then it ended up just being something I became totally obsessed with. And it's kind of just how I navigate the world now. Everything I do is related to recording and people I've recorded. It's my social life is based around that. So it kind of ended up consuming my life unexpectedly. I didn't really foresee it going that way.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. That you also were you didn't realize that you could make a career in that when you were younger, and that was kind of something that changed that perspective. That's really interesting as well.
It kind of goes back to... No, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, I was going to say, I know people that have gone to schools that they, even in high school, they offered some sort of rudimentary recording stuff. But my school didn't touch on anything like that at all. It was very much you go here and then you go to a 4-year college afterwards and do good on your SATs and stuff like that. They didn't really talk about trade-based careers at all. So I was a bit in the dark about that stuff.
Yeah, they never talk about trades or jobs in art that aren't necessarily being there's a lot of stuff you can do in music and not be a rock star and still make a comfortable life, and you can still be creatively fulfilled, but you just never get taught any of it for some reason.
There's not a lot of support for that in the public school system.
It goes back to what you were kind of talking about in the beginning, Chandler, where you're it's just this sort of unappreciated side of things, or maybe not even unappreciated, but unrecognized.
Yeah, it's not even people are actively trying to ignore it. It's just they don't realize what goes, because unless you've took classes about it or you've been around that process before, you have friends in a band or something, you don't understand even how that really works. You don't know the pieces that go into it.
Totally, which I think is kind of a blessing. More really? So, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when music is this thing that just materializes out of thin air. Sometimes the more you learn how, it's the metaphor about watching sausage get made or something like that. You know, it takes away a little bit of the magic. So I understand. I mean, I was like that as well when I was a bit younger, for sure. Music, I didn't understand all these other details that went into it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised when people don't. You do definitely have to kind of have, you have to be really into it. And I think following bands closely to know all those inner dynamics that way. And it's something I know now from being a recording engineer. I'm always looking up credits and people's names and stuff like that, trying to figure out who did what on records and all that. But I can see how that's a total, another world for people that they don't care to get into, they like just the surface level of the music, which I understand too. It keeps things more unknown, which can be nice as well.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like this thick cloud of almost depression around wannabe engineers that are just like berated with this idea that they're not going to be able to turn what they love into a career. So how did you navigate that path? How did you go from somebody who realized that you could make a career doing what you loved and then actually got there?
It's one of those things that still, even now, where I would say my career is at the point where it's the most like concrete and it feels like things are falling into place. I still have this constant, I think it's, the kind of the plight of freelance work in general is that like, have you ever really made it? Because like, who knows what next month is going to look like kind of thing.
Wow, yeah.
But it used to be it definitely used to be this thing where I was just, I had this kind of bleak outlook as well that I just didn't know how it was going to work out. So I had the benefit of, I lived at home for a very long time and saved all the money I made from recording because I just wasn't sure how consistent it was going to be. So that was a safety net that I had for sure. But I just continued to just like, you just keep working the connections that you have and you try to stay connected to people. If you isolate yourself from like a musical scene that's happening, then you won't become a trusted member of that scene. And that's like, I think where a lot of work comes from, is aligning yourself with people that are around you and whatnot that are making music and make yourself a trusted person, because a lot of times people just want to record with somebody that they think that they know understands them and that they have like that, that level of communication is already established. So being a part of like a scene is really helpful. But yeah, I lived at home. I lived with my dad. I recorded out of my dad's house quite a bit, as well, and just saved as much as I could because I just wasn't sure how consistent work was going to be. But it wasn't until recently that I finally was able to move to Oakland with my partner and move out. And I have like a rehearsal space that I record out of now and a studio in Oakland that I do most of my work out of. And work has kind of gotten consistent enough to where I'm like paying rent from being able to record. Mm-hmm. So it took a while to kind of build up the momentum. But yeah, it's weird that it's working out. I never really thought it would. I think that's a byproduct of living in the Bay Area as well, is that things are expensive out here. And it kind of seems like a pipe dream that you would do anything besides work a 9-to-5 job and survive. So I'm definitely super thankful that it is happening. But I also live in this constant, like, oh God, who knows what next year is going to look like kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm guessing there's pretty stiff competition out there too. It seems like that seems like the place to go if you have a dream to do something artistic.
Yeah, it's either that or like, I'm really glad I've never made the jump down to LA, because I think LA is like the epitome of that. And I could never align with kind of the way that, I don't know, the way music seems to be done down there sometimes is like, there's like too competitive for me.
Yeah.
The cool thing with the Bay Area is like, I don't know, there's all these different small pockets of people that have like this kind of ecosystem that relies on themselves, like autonomously, musically. So while there is like kind of competition, there's still like a place you can get in where you fit in, kind of depending on what you're trying to do. And I think that's really cool. Like that, like there's little like scenes and like pockets of music that support themselves and don't rely on outside help to make things happen, and they thrive within their own communities. And I think that's something the Bay Area does really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're a part of one of those scenes. Obviously, you've found one of those groups of people that seem to have this autonomous kind of, way of doing things, and everyone supports each other and stuff. And I don't know, like, when did you? Because I looking at your website and looking at your record of everyone you've mixed for and stuff, like when did you hook up with those guys like Sam and like the people from MJ and stuff? Like when did you hook up with them and really became part of that clique? Because you had a lot of stuff that you did before you started working with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that can all be kind of boiled down to this one specific time. I think it was like 2014 I believe either 2013 or 2014, where I was working down at a studio in Fremont called the Panda Studios. That was one of my first legitimate recording job that I got after I left community college and anything like that. I started interning down at this place called Panda. And then after interning for a few months, I started working for them. Like I was one of the house engineers. And Just Friends was there recording Rock to the Rhythm with the studio owner at the time. And I was assisting on it. So that's when I met Sam for the first time. And the way things shook out is that they were working on that record, and then they had time booked with me to record the horns for it and everything. And then Sam was going to finish up the record. But they ended up enjoying working with me so much that they just had me end up finishing the record for them and all that. And that's how we like got close. And we had like a ton of like kind of like mutual connections, but we never really met each other and like hung out with each other until that time. But that's kind of like the moment where from that point on, like I would say it probably changed my life entirely, was just meeting all those people, because that created the connections with all the other bands in like the Dublin, Pleasanton area, which eventually led to me meeting like Eric, and that's what started the whole Mom Jeans connection and all that. So meeting Sam down at the Panda Studios was like the kind of epicenter of all that stuff.
Wow, that's crazy. Just like total happenstance almost, like meeting them. That's insane.
And then when did you make the transition to like being able to play with them too?
That happened kind of right around that time. The cool thing about Just Friends was like it was kind of this open door policy that like Sam would always encourage. There was another intern from the UK that was at that studio at the time named James, who was actually the mastering engineer I use today. Really good friend of mine, but he was there at the time too. And like Sam was always getting James to come play shows. They did even like a small tour while he was here. Like Sam always wanted like to bring people in to share in the joy of like playing Just Friends shows. So that's when it started for me. It was like, and that was one of the first shows I played in forever, because I had been focused on recording so much. I hadn't played in a band at all since I was like in high school. So it was really fun. I went down to Santa Cruz. The first show I played was at a laser tag place in Dublin with them. It was super fun. And then after that, like, it became like, since one of the guitar players in JF, Matt Yanko, had to move to Philly, he left California. After that, I kind of became more of like a consistent guitar player. It wasn't just like me hopping on for gigs for fun. It was like me kind of filling out this other like second guitar slot. So that's where the kind of necessity for that came from.
Wow, that's crazy. No, it's just like it's interesting that you've been able to. I mean, do you think it's helpful with what you do as an engineer? Do you think it's helpful to stay kind of related to playing as a musician and playing shows and doing that? Do you think that helped round you as an engineer as well? Do you think that's an important component?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think as much as you can sympathize with the perspective of the person that you're working with, I think that helps a lot, because if you become attuned to like the things the concerns that they have and like kind of the intimacies of their performance and stuff like that. And if you know how it feels to like, you know, stand in front of your amp and play your guitar and like how that's a part of your performance, and you'll be sympathetic if someone wants to do that in the studio and stuff like that. I think it's really helpful to like kind of be aware of how all the different aspects of presenting your music and stuff like that. So I think playing shows and understanding that side of it makes you more, you know, a more like trustworthy person in the studio as well.
That's really interesting. We've talked, like we know a few other engineers, and like one of the biggest things that they say is that, I mean, it seems very important to have that relationship, to have that rapport with the people that you're working with, and to make an environment that they feel comfortable in. And that seems like almost the 75% of the battle of being an engineer, like at least from my perspective, of just like building that strong, because when you have that strong connection and they feel comfortable with you, then only better material is going to come of that, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And you can record that material like in a, you know, a basement or like a practice space or something. And like, you know, that connection, I think, is going to be more important than any sort of, a lot of people get caught up in like, you know, like, oh, the sound and the equipment and all this stuff. I have to like really focus on that. But if you're making somebody, like, if somebody's not comfortable and they're not performing, and you've removed them from all the kind of elements that make them feel comfortable creating music, then like you've already kind of lost the battle there. Like, it doesn't matter how nice of equipment or nice of a space you're in. If somebody's not like on top of their game because they've been removed and like kind of corralled into a space where they're not performing like in a like way that they're comfortable with, then it's going to suffer more from that than anything else, for sure.
Wow.
Does it ever get like intimidating when someone comes to you and they're like, they want to record the album they've been working on for like 10 years or whatever, like they've been writing for it for so long, and now it's like, now's the time where to like get it right? Does that ever get in your head, or like, have you like figured that out so far?
A situation like that, I think, would be less intimidating, because the longer you've had time to like, I don't know, ruminate on the music and all that, like the more it's like second nature to perform it. So and that's something I've noticed more, is that a band's first record that they've like played a ton of local shows with that material, like they've performed those songs up and down, like, you know, so many times, that music flows from them super naturally. And like, there's no thought process to it. And if anything, situations like that are like a lot more rewarding and fluid. But it's the situations where people come in and they're up against some sort of deadline to create a musical product that they have to put out for whatever reason. It's those situations where it's like, that's a little bit more stressful for me, because the music hasn't had this time to like manifest in that natural way that it does after you've like really like took ownership over it and like kind of expanded on all the possibilities with it, when it's like you have these like more like fledgling ideas that you have to cram into an album really quickly. That's sometimes more of a stressful situation, because I think there's this level of like, does anyone really know what's going on here? Does anyone know what's right for the song yet? Right. That sort of thing. And I've seen that happen for sure.
When you ask like a question and then no one really knows the answer because they just haven't thought about that yet.
Yeah, exactly. You can just tell. You can tell when somebody like, you know, they love a song that they wrote and they're like, you know, like there's no question really about it. But yeah, there's these other things where, you know, people are like, I have no idea. And they're like, I had no idea that this was like the part that so-and-so was even playing over this section. And then that makes me go like, why are we even trying to document this uncertainty right now, you know?
So what do you do in that situation as the engineer? Do you have to step in, or do you let them kind of try to figure it out? Like, what's that dynamic?
I try to read the room as much as possible, because people can be pretty temperamental. So like stepping in like has to be done like, you know, when
very tactfully.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen, the one thing I try not to do is like, it's easy to get flustered and frustrated on behalf of the people that you're working for. But if you let that show, then things can fall apart entirely. Yeah. Even though it might feel good to let off this steam and be like, oh, why are you making my job harder? Like chances are they already feel pretty guilty if things aren't going well. So there's no reason to like remind them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always like, I try and see if I feel like they are totally capable of working through whatever, you know, disconnect there is, then I trust in them to do so. But if I see them kind of hitting this wall and maybe not realizing it, I try and offer whatever sort of perspective I can to help. And a lot of times I'll tell people like, you know, maybe this is not, maybe we shouldn't even be doing this in the first place. And like, not in a like defeatist kind of way, but just in a practical way. Like there's nothing wrong with like coming back to something or taking more time, you know, if things aren't gelling. Like you shouldn't, I think forcing an issue is like kind of this unrealistic idea when it comes to, because a lot of times with creating art, like, you know, you have nothing but time. A lot of deadlines are like, you know, imaginary, really, when you break them down. So
that's so funny. That's so true, honestly. So would you say that, like, on your website, I really like that you have like that FAQ section where it's like the certain questions people might have about the recording process, and your answer is pretty much like across the board, yes, of course, but you do have that little section at the bottom where it's like, I'll only say something if I know it's not going to work. If I know and I have experience about it, you know what I mean? Which I thought was an interesting thing to present as to somebody who's maybe looking at you and scouting you as an engineer and kind of setting that vibe of you're down for anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people will approach situations as like an authority on the matter when it comes to working with clients and stuff like that. And they're there to like guide them into the right direction with things. But I think you can learn a lot from, you know, letting people like approach things in their own way and not always trying to like boil down like this methodology that's going to be a one size fits all approach to a situation.
There's like no
and
formula.
Yeah, which a lot of people, I mean, I understand like wanting to have repeat consistent results in a kind of like this commodity based like music world that we live in.
Yeah.
But I think you can end up kind of suppressing what makes certain artists unique if you, without question, just jump right into formulaic, like based recording styles and all that. So I try to like embrace what makes the bands unique and let them kind of approach things in the way that they want to. And I see it being like a catastrophic event, then of course I'll let them know otherwise. But like normally, like it's
no,
cool
please do not set that on fire.
Yeah,
I know it looks cool, but it's not about looks. It's about sound.
Yeah. No one's gonna even hear it if it's on fire. But yeah, you know, it's like
I'm sorry.
I just don't. I try not to come from a place where like I know everything.
Yeah.
I don't, especially when it comes to other people's art and their music and stuff like that. Like they're more of an authority on the matter than I am. So I'm just here for like technical guidance. But with that being said, if somebody wants me to like tear it up and you know, just freely fire off my ideas and my suggestions and all that, then I'm totally game to do that. But it's just not the foot I lead forward with, because I want people to feel safe in their own expression.
Exactly.
So on that note, what advice would you put forward for someone who's like going into the studio for the first time to like record their band or whatever? Like, is there anything they should do or just like think about before going in that'll make the process smoother?
I mean, definitely like knowing what you want sonically is helpful. Rehearsing a lot, just like taking out any sort of like anomalies that could slow down the process and like kind of put a damper on things. Like rehearsing parts for sure is really important. Like making sure that you can perform comfortably and like without stressing too much, I think is good, because then it'll keep your like morale higher. Because there's nothing that'll like suck the life out of a session more than like a drummer having to play the same fill like 50 times to try and get it right, which is fine if there's a lot of time booked for those sort of things and like everybody's aware of that ahead of time. But like a lot of times people like are booking stuff on a tight time crunch because studio time's expensive and making music is just as not profitable as it always has been. So like sometimes you don't have this luxury of taking a ton of time to do something. So being rehearsed is good. Like, and knowing the song front to back as best you can, I think is helpful, because then that alleviates this tension, because recording is already like kind of like by default going to be a tense experience. It's really hard to make it as natural as just playing music should be on its own. There's always that level of abstraction that comes from just being kind of under the microscope recording. But I think on top of that, just understanding that like in most cases, engineers are there to like help you. So if you feel unsure about something, like if you play your guitar and you don't think the tone sounds good, but the engineer just kind of says like, go for it, like you should say something. Like you shouldn't assume that like things are always going to get fixed in the end. I think that's an important thing, because that happens a lot with people. I think they trust that they can just like go in there and just provide performances and not really be involved in like the tonal aspects of things and like how things are getting done. And they just kind of trust the process. And then they get back this thing that feels totally divorced from like the music that they make. So I think making sure that you're really like in tune with like what you want and having that dialogue and that conversation and stuff like that, I think is a really important thing. And that often gets glossed over like the first time you record, because you just don't know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So music making has changed so much, especially within the last 20 years, but the last 10 and 15 as well. And so as engineering, and there's been these huge technological advancements as far as software is concerned. I was wondering where you kind of stood with all that, and how because I mean, you're out in California, so your rent's high, your overhead's probably crazy. Like how have you kind of embraced that change, or like what has been your perspective of kind of the rise of software versus hardware?
I think in general, I have a good outlook towards it, because from my perspective, I guess this could be seen as like a potential like scary thing, but I see a rise in people being able to record music on their own now a lot more, because that kind of threshold, the buy-in threshold of having to get all this hardware and equipment to do it has been going down. But like the functionality of these cheaper softwares have been on the rise. And so from my perspective, that's actually been cool, because there's like a uptick in like recording literacy a bit now, to where I can communicate with people a little bit easier, because they now like chances are they've been making demos at home, and they kind of know like the sounds they're after and the lingo a little bit more from doing that. So I think the accessibility of recording software and recording equipment is like an overall net positive, because it kind of breaks down this communication barrier that was there before, and people are becoming more musically autonomous, and not like, there's been plenty of situations where people come into studios and they're like, oh, I have no idea what any of this stuff is. And it's kind of this like playful ignorance, but also like, I think it's people selling themselves short, because they could be much more kind of decisive about their music if they were to understand some of these things. And it's cool that is like becoming more and more accessible to people. And yeah, as far as I go, like I have a fair amount of like hardware, and I also use like a fair amount of software, and it's come in handy in a lot of different ways. I was able to mix a record on tour not too long ago that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had to lug all my hardware around, but I was able to just do it off my laptop in the green room with headphones on, and just cross-reference it as much as I could across car speakers, and it worked out well. So I think the accessibility of it overall is like a positive thing. That's kind of where I come from with it, at least.
Yeah, it's really cool. And going back to what you were saying about, your customers having more of a literacy of that kind of stuff, I imagine that just makes the whole process easier and faster, and then they're more relaxed, and then the product's better, and they're happier. So that does sound like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you also do front of house engineering as well. How did that start? Was that kind of just one of those things that you picked up in the beginning so that you could be part of like different scenes more, or was that something you caught on to later?
It kind of developed a little bit later. Once like MJ and JF started touring like on these like kind of larger scales, where they were like playing real venues with like actual like, nice PAs and consoles and stuff like that. I saw it as a way, since I was going on these tours usually playing anyways, and I was around this stuff, and I saw kind of the headaches that would happen during these sound checks sometimes, because it's just like recording too. It's like, if someone doesn't understand your band, they're not going to understand what you're going for. And there's going to, and you only have one night to make it right in those like situations. So like, if there's this like fundamental disconnect between what people want and what they're expecting, like I just saw it become this like point of contention that really could sometimes mess up the whole feel of the show for people. Like if someone's feeling like they're, they got attitude from a, monitor person, or they got, like they got kind of somehow talked down to, that'll fuck up. Oh, sorry. There it is. I apologize.
I'll go for it.
That'll mess up their whole night, essentially. So
that makes sense. I guess I thought it would be more stressful, because you play and then you have to go run to the booth so you can mix the next show or whatever. But I guess that makes sense. Yeah. It's like, I guess it's probably the chill part of the show is when you're just watching your friends play and you can be like, I know what they want exactly.
Mm-hmm. It does feel, the work is really kind of front loaded once you get there. Like that's a lot of the scrambling I'm doing is like setting up mics and like like making sure that all that goes together. And then, after playing and having to run, if I'm doing like double duty some night, like then that like the sprinting from the stage to like go do that is like hectic. But once the show's rolling and you can tell that everybody's in a good mood, then that definitely like takes a lot of stress off. And then I'm just kind of hanging out and watching the show.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, isn't that like to me, that seems like just the most obviously ideal thing to shoot for, is like to have someone like you who it's like you were in the studio to make the stuff, you know, the ins and outs, you know, these people. So why not come on the road and make sure that, you know, these venues aren't, you know, messing up the sound of these bands, you know, throughout the country when you're playing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm happy that I can like provide that consistency, because there's a lot of anomalies when you're on the road and you don't know how each night's going to go. So the fact that they can count that I'm going to be the one like handling, like making sure that they sound good and like that they're being presented accurately every night, I'm glad that I can alleviate that sort of like question mark from them at least.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really weird and stressful to like go out on the road. You get to a place, you're like, oh, I'm excited for the show, and you're there for sound check, and then like there's the venue staff are just being not cool to you, and you're like, why is this happening? Like, we're here to just do, you know what I mean?
We're on the
like,
same team.
Yeah, it's like, why are they acting like I'm a lesser act than other people they may have worked with? Like, I'm sure they don't do this to everybody, so like, why, you know what I mean?
All those things you mentioned are like totally like played through my head 100 times. And I understand that like it's a difficult job, and I think people probably come out like on the defensive because more often than not they've had to deal with less than favorable people. But it sucks when it's just like, man, I'm just like I sympathize with you. Just like give me a chance.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You don't have to feel I'm terrible, you know, before we've even gotten rolling. So.
And like recording engineering is already complicated enough, but to then do it in a live setting in a different place every single night seems ridiculous. Like that's like all the different kind of anomalies and just inconsistencies that you have to deal with sounds like a nightmare on a nightly basis.
It definitely can. On some of the more like the smaller club tours and stuff, it was this mixed bag every night where it's like, I don't even know if there's going to be enough like functioning inputs on stage for me to plug in all the mics.
Are you talking about Just Friends
especially
shows?
for Just Friends.
Yeah. I mean, that's like someone's going to have to share the trumpet mic, you know, like we can't do all 16 inputs.
We do not have enough trumpet mics today.
Yeah. But
this venue seriously needs to look over their trumpet mic inventory.
Yeah, we need to like, you know, when we email ahead of time, we try to make sure that there can be the right accommodations.
Yeah, do you know how many of us there are?
Yes.
Yeah,
also have to reinforce the stage.
Thing. Yeah, the look of terror in people's eyes when they would see how many people are actually like getting on stage to do it.
They're like, is this crew too? Like, what's going on?
It's like, can we sound check the first band? No, just the first band. Oh, this is the first band.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's nice to be able to interface in that way and not just kind of alleviate that stress, hopefully for both parties, for the staff of the venue and the band itself, and just make the whole thing go smoother.
Yeah. So what is it like in terms of, I mean, you said you were mixing an album on the road, you're doing the front of house stuff, you're still doing, you're playing in some of these bands. Like how
sounds like the dream.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, but it also
sounds like you don't get sleep.
Yeah, where do you have the time to pull all that off? Like, how do you juggle all that?
Well, with luckily on tour, there's a whole chunk of it where I'm just sitting in a van usually. So
that makes sense.
That part, that if you have things to get done, that is a great time to do them, because you're usually going to be there for, you know, on the short end, like 3 or 4 hours, but on the long end, sometimes we're in the van for like, you know, a 9-hour, 10-hour drive.
Nice.
So that was the cool thing about this last tour I was on. I just got a laptop for recording. I usually use the desktop computer, but now I finally have a laptop. So that's been really cool. I just like pop in headphones in the van and I can work on mixes there. for stuff, which has been like really nice. Because normally when I go on tour, I'm just away from all my recording stuff and I can't really do anything.
That's the worst feeling. I recently also just got a laptop for editing and stuff and working on, and like it's a liberating feeling to be like, it doesn't matter where I am anymore. I can still be productive.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Because also then you're kind of like, it used to be like I would go home and someone would be like, hey, I need this file. And I was like, well, I'll try to get it to you tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah.
But now it's like I can kind of get it, like, you know, so luckily people are usually pretty good about not hounding me for things too much. But it's kind of interesting also being on the proverbial clock all the time now, too. But it's nice. I mean, it's cool to, you know, even if I'm feeling inspired to work on something, I always have it at my fingertips.
Yeah, that's rad.
Have you?
But as far as being, oh, well, what's that?
Have you been able to record anyone in the van yet? Like, you should do an entire album literally on the road.
We Matt Mulchaney wants to do that. He's another engineer we had on our show before. He's planning on actually coming out to California with Brandon Wonder. That's a plan. That's something they want to do, and he wants to do like a recording tour in his van. He's going to bring like a little bit of equipment and his laptop, and Brandon wants to document it.
That sounds crazy.
That could be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I don't have a portable interface yet, but I really want to get one so I could do like vocals on the road or something like that, or even just like DI guitar or something.
Crazy.
Even just from like my own stuff, so I could like demo things out and things, and like always feel like I'm not like trapped from being able to get ideas out there. So
yeah, no, that's crazy.
So what kind of stuff is inspiring you to work or just even create these days? I'm sure you take on so much being in the area that you're at. You probably see a pretty interesting kind of array of up and comers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely do. I think something that is inspiring me right now is definitely Bart from Graduating Life. He's really taken, like, he's really put his all into his band recently, and that's been really inspiring to witness. And he's like trying to like just put himself in the forefront for the first time in a while, because he's kind of split his responsibilities up over like stuff that he does for Mom Jeans and all that. And now I can see that he's like really putting himself forward and trying to like, you know, manifest things with his own band. And that's got me also thinking like, I should like work on some of my own stuff too, you know. Like I should also like kind of, you know, put my creative aspirations kind of in the forefront of my life a little bit as well, because it's tough. Like I love working for other people, and I get a lot of joy out of like helping other people with their music. But then there's also the side of me that has been a little like underserviced a bit, because it's really time consuming to work on other people's records, and I'm kind of surrounded by musicians that are pretty capped as far as like how many projects they're involved in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like kind of like try and facilitate something for myself. But I've been trying to do that more lately, and that's been feeling good. And there's a really, really cool punk and hardcore scene in Oakland, and that's the kind of music that I make myself. So I'm inspired by that a lot as well, and I would like to get more involved in that. And there's like a huge amount of catharsis that comes from playing shows like that and being involved in communities like that. So I'm just trying to kind of distribute some of my time that I have when I'm not working on records to manifesting that sort of like that sort of space for myself, and prioritizing myself in that way a little bit.
Yeah, it's important, honestly, and it must be kind of, I don't know. I would imagine it's hard sometimes to be working on everything they're working on, but then you still want to have time to pursue your own stuff, and you see everyone else doing their stuff, and you know, eventually you're going to get to a point as an artist, as a creative person, where you want to do it for you too, you know? Yeah, totally. It's definitely, you can definitely share the joy, like the, you know, symbiotic joy of seeing people that you work with, like go out and do things and like reap the benefits from it is like a really cool thing. But then after a while, you're like, I kind of want to do some of this too for myself a little bit, you know, which is cool because I'm surrounded by like, you know, tons of supportive people and talented people that like, even though they are like
pretty maxed out in the projects that they're involved in. I luckily never have a shortage of people that are willing to lend a creative hand in what I'm trying to do as well. So
that's awesome.
So there's a pretty funny question written on our outline. I'm assuming Chandler wrote it. It just says, "Why does he use a Mac?" And I think I know the answer, so I want him to hear it.
I think it's a lot. Because I've had musicians come to me who are just starting to make their stuff, and they're like, I need to buy one or the other, and I don't know. Like I'm leaning towards a Mac, but then like the Windows stuff, like you know what I mean. So it's a question that I've had asked a lot of times, and even that I wonder sometimes, because I have found recently I like mixing more on a Mac. I'm just gonna be honest. Like even though I hate Apple,
that's a hot take from you.
I know I kind of hate Apple, but I've noticed I just have a better flow with the kind of programs that a Mac has as opposed to what I have available on Windows. But
yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to for me. It's just I've been on Macs my whole life. And the way they just feel like the interface and everything all just feels a little bit more fluid. Every once in a while I have to use a PC because Chris from Just Friends, who does a lot of the production for Just Friends, he's on PCs, and I hop on and I'm like, it just feels weird. I feel like I'm at school or something like that. But I will say this. I think the reason why I prefer Macs is because I'm probably just not smart enough to do PCs, because I'm sure I could have saved myself a lot of money if I built myself a PC or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't have those skills, so I'm going to pay a little bit extra. And, if that means that, I, have to spend a little bit more money, that's fine with me, because I fire it up and it looks nice and it performs the exact way I want it to. So.
Right.
So I think that might be it as well. I think if you know your way around computers, PC is probably the way to go, because you can probably build a supercomputer for a fraction of the cost. But I'm not one of those people. So.
Right. I'm pretty sure you could do it. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
if I managed to build a PC, I'm very sure you could. But I also get where you're coming from.
I think there's a misconception that like recording stuff, like it requires some like, I don't know. I'm not like what's it called, an electrical engineer or anything like that. Like. It's a little bit more, I guess it can be sometimes a little flashier than it actually is, the recording stuff. It's a lot of cables and wires.
I don't think you're giving yourself
Dude, if you got cable and wire management down, you can build a PC.
Yeah, you can. That's like
that's really all it is. The rest
Getting
of
it running, super easy.
Literally
wire management is like most of the build.
They're just big Legos, and there's only one spot that each part goes into. So unless you like really mess it up, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm selling myself short here.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep using that.
Does anyone want to buy my laptop?
For sure. For sure. How much?
Oh, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I don't want to know, or you don't want to tell me. Which one?
I don't think I want to tell you.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to tell you. It was a lot, but I'm hoping I don't have to buy another computer for another 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
That's nice. Goal.
They do have decent lifespans. That is for sure. So, so you don't put a lot of importance in gear, from what I've gathered and you talking, because I think it's really easy as an engineer to feel like you
have to buy all this stuff.
Yeah, you got to buy all the stuff, and then you'll be better at the stuff. And it's like, not always true.
It's like a similar thing with musicians, where like, yeah, the better amp and the better guitar will make you sound good. But if you don't actually sound good, like if you can't mix, it doesn't matter. Like if you're using a $4,000 EQ, like your mix still sucks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's not going to like materialize a better product just because you put money into the piece of equipment, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I with that being said, I'm a sucker for nice gear. Like I have some nice, like I have microphones that I've definitely shelled out cash for, because
microphones are like 100% an exception. If you're gonna draw a hard line, you still need good mics. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're gonna throw down money, I think mics, preamps, good place to start for sure. As far as processing goes, like it's nice. I have a pair of distressors. I have an API 2500. I like those things a lot, and they do what they do really well. But yeah, like I've also just I've done mixes. I've ended up doing mixes where I'm just kind of in the box using stock plugins and stuff like that too. And if the tones are good and the song's really good, then that's going to be most of the work right there. But it is nice to have like these tools that will do what they do really well. But yeah, I'm not always pining for like the next, once I get this piece of gear, then I'm going to really make it, you know?
Do you have a favorite piece of gear that you have? Whether it be a microphone or otherwise?
The tried and true.
Yeah, I have this 4-channel preamp from Eric Valentine's company, Undertone Audio.
Cool.
Yeah, so he made this. He used to make these consoles, and this is like the preamp from the console. He made a 4-channel version of it, and I just absolutely love. Like ever since I got it, I like gear that makes me not have to think about things.
Yeah.
So like ever since I got it, I don't really think about like what preamps to use. I just use this thing, and then like the gain is stepped on it in 5 decibel increments, so recall is really easy on it. There's a different switchable impedance mode that is good for ribbon microphones, which I enjoy using that a lot. So I like this. Like I like that a lot. I like things that aren't super flashy because it's nice just to like plug in and go. So things that are just like really robust and like well built that sound good is like kind of my thing.
Eric Valentine has like a YouTube channel where he just like deep dives into his work, which is like a crazy thing that a professional in such a competitive market does. And he'll just like show you everything that he did to get that sound. They're really awesome. And he seems super talented and super smart. So I'm sure his stuff's great.
Yeah. The way people always describe Eric is that he's like a nerd to the highest degree.
Yeah.
The amount of like technical specification he gets into when it comes to like the equipment that he's built and all that is like, it's like supersedes most other like people that like do this sort of stuff. So he's like a true geek when it comes to it, which I think is why his stuff is so great. I've been meaning to watch those videos. If anything, I'm like pretty intimidated to like crack open.
No, go for it. They're honestly really cool and they're really nice and they're really helpful. Even if you feel like you know what you're doing, it's just it's great to see like other perspectives and stuff. So, and back with what you were saying, I think he did Gives You Hell. What's that? All American Rejects, right?
Yeah.
He did that whole song completely in the box. It wasn't all stock plugins, but it was all software. So
what does in the box mean?
It means you're using like plugins that are like just within your DAW. You're not using any hardware.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy.
So I mean, some of those plugins are pieces of software he bought, and some of them are really good. But he was also using, like I saw, he was using like just Pro Tools plugins as well. So
that's like such a tightened up song.
Oh yeah, it sounds great.
What else has he done?
I don't know. I mean, you might be able to shed some more light on that. I mean, he's been in the biz for a long time. He's worked.
He did that Third Eye Blind record, the self-titled one.
Okay.
The one with Semi-Charmed Life on it. He also did Smash Mouth too, and then he did Queens of the Stone Age. I think he did one of those records.
So that's what Wikipedia tells me.
Yeah,
dude, that Third Eye Blind album is one of my favorite albums, just like ever.
That album sonically is wild.
Yeah.
It is a really and out of all like I'm not a big fan of a lot of like the rock star mixing engineer people.
Yeah.
Because I'm not like a big Chris Lord-Alge fan. I'm not a big Tom Lord-Alge fan. Like some of Tom's stuff is cool, but like a lot of that stuff is so kind of like it's overly stylized and like a lot of that stuff is so bombastic that it's like alienating to me.
I feel that.
It's music. It's just not the music I reach for. I didn't grow up on a lot of like pop punk, so I think that might be why.
Yeah.
But I really like Eric's stuff because he toes this line between like the stylized but also like the kind of natural in a really cool way, to where like his mixes are like super impressive, but they're not like these like obnoxious like, oh god, this sounds so synthetic, you know?
No, they just sound
really
good, like they're tight
in that realm.
Yeah.
He did songs for the deaf. That's crazy. He has a lot of stuff. That's insane. I have to scroll very far on Wikipedia.
Those like gang vocals in Gives You Hell were done at Skywalker Ranch. Fun fact.
Why?
I learned that. I don't know.
What do you mean?
That's such a weird. It's done all in the box except for the vocals at Skywalker.
Well, no. I mean, like you're recording, wherever you want. You can record in a nice studio and still be considered in the box.
Yeah.
But all the processing that's done after the fact wasn't any.
Skywalker Ranch is not a bad place to pick, I guess. Like they got that's a crazy stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that was like a thing he wanted to do or if the band wanted to do it or what.
Skywalkers wanted to do it.
There's a good chance that like the studio he was using maybe just didn't have the kind of room that they wanted to record that kind of gang vocal at or something. So I don't know.
I've heard that Skywalker has a pretty crazy like soundstage. I know that I'm pretty sure that's where he did that Third Eye Blind record. So it might be like one of his like top choices of a place to go.
That's insane.
I mean, I would. That'd be cool.
I think he just really wanted to do it, and he showed up, and it sounded good, and he's like, "Thank God."
Yeah, could be.
So, man, dude, it's been like getting such perspective from you as an engineer, really awesome. It's been super sick, and there's so much knowledge that you dropped on it. And I think it's also cool, and I think it's encouraging. I don't know if the impression was given off well enough, but Zach, for instance, is trying to become an engineer and studying to become an engineer and stuff, and has been doing a lot of work like that. So I think it's interesting to get a perspective from someone like you who is doing it and is doing pretty well at it. And I love the work of like you do awesome stuff, and to hear you kind of give this insight that's like the ceiling, or I guess the barrier of entry, isn't as crazy and impossible as one may think. And you don't need the best gear, and you don't need the best spot, and it's like you just need to be a cool person and make cool stuff and care about what you're doing and care about the people you're working with. And
you might end up in Just Friends.
And you might
and then you're golden. Once you get your foot in, you can't leave. No, but yeah, I'm glad that that's what you take away from it, because like I've spent a lot of time in my life like kind of, agonizing over this stuff, like, because it is a really competitive world, and there's a lot of people that would have you believe that like, like you got to be making the best sounding stuff. Like if your stuff's not going to get on the radio, then like you're wasting your time kind of thing. Like there's that weird like cutthroat nature about things. So yeah, and I got wrapped up in that for a long time, and letting go of that and embracing that, like, just finding a community and helping them with their artwork is like the coolest thing you can do. And like if you take care of the community will take care of you, hopefully, so I would always prioritize that over anything else for sure.
So we have less than 5 minutes. I don't want to start a tangent, but do you have like a favorite mix?
A favorite mix?
Yeah. It could be an album. It doesn't have to be a song, of course, but
just one. You have to pick one song.
One
everything.
One drum fill.
I don't know. Like Daft Punk stuff is tight, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know you're influencing the outcome of it.
Yeah, well,
it's funny. Whenever I have to reference a monitor setup, or like when I check a house PA on tour, I always do Back in Black by AC/DC.
Wow.
Because if you just listen to that, because that song, you're used to hearing that song everywhere. You've probably heard it on every type of speaker possible. But yeah, that mix is like, it's surreal. It's like a holy grail kind of thing. Like, it's just like, how did this even, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like immediately iconic as soon as you hear it. Nothing's overly distorted. The cymbals are like perfect. The space on it, there's like, I don't know. There's just something about that it seems like it was like handed down from God or something like that. Like,
it's that guitar tone. I think I've heard something where it was like a very like specific kind of popular Marshall amp that was just like tweaked slightly or something like that, and that's kind of where that came from.
And he used his wireless system when he recorded guitars because he liked the way that it made his amp sound too. Apparently, that's another part of the lore. But that's, I mean, I don't listen to Back in Black a ton.
Yeah.
That's something that like. Yeah. I did when I was, 12 years old, but I don't really anymore. So, but I'm going to, besides that, there's a record called Italian Platinum from a band called Silkworm that I really like. I've always really liked the sound of that record.
What was it called?
So that's probably like one of my favorite sounding albums of all time.
What was the name of that again? Sorry.
Silkworm is the band, and then Italian Platinum is the name of the record.
Okay. That sounds cool.
Italian Platinum. I like that.
And then we did this at the end of Matt Mulchaney's podcast. Do you have like a couple producers people should check out that like maybe they probably know their work, but they don't know them?
Or engineers maybe either.
I mean, I'm a huge Steve Albini fan. That's definitely where I got a lot of my inspiration from. So I think diving into his work and the bands that he works with is always really cool. I think his take on making records is a really interesting take. His comments on the music industry are really cool. That was a lot of stuff that helped me kind of awaken what I was trying to do as an engineer. So, Steve Albini is definitely like someone I look up to a lot. Trying to think of other people. I'll shout out my friend James Travascus, who I mentioned earlier. He's an awesome engineer. He's a great mastering engineer. He's in the UK, so if anyone's UK based around Bristol, it's definitely a great person to work with. So,
do you have anybody else you want to shout out quick too?
Just in general, because we're getting ready to head on out.
Mosey on out of here.
Crawl away.
There's nothing, I mean, I'm sure anyone listening to this knows all my friends and all my friends who make music, so probably no need to shout them out.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
If you think you deserve a shout out, you got a shout out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're listening, this is for you.
You could just close up on Pat's mom jeans shirt, for instance. Like,
All right, well, I think that's
Do
it.
you have any parting words?
I
don't know.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and thanks so much for imparting those wisdoms. I think there's a lot of people who are going to find a lot of value in a lot of what you have to say and your perspective on things.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this. 59 degrees? Is that what that says?
Yeah, it's 59
so that's
degrees.
very warm for Pennsylvania in February.
Ryan, how warm is it in California right now? How mad should I be?
Let's see. I'm indoors right now, but let me look at the weather.
I shouldn't have done this.
66 right now.
Oh,
66.
Perfect.
How is
That is
there only
pretty good.
10 degrees difference across the entire? That's wild.
My tickets are already booked. I'm coming. I'm going to Cali.
Yeah, it's going to be like this every day forever.
It's never changing. All right.
no, but thank you so much
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was cool
Absolutely.
getting to talk about this stuff, and thanks for being like earnestly interested in all of it. I'm always flattered when people are.
I didn't have to
surely
try
are.
very hard. Trust me. Interest was there.
What you do is amazing. You're a wizard, and you've brought you've brought to life so many bands that we're huge fans of, and have even said that. Like, I know Eric once said that if it weren't for you helping them find their sound for like Best Buds, like that album wouldn't have been anything. You know what I mean?
There's
and,
a whole other
I'm super
15-minute
flattered they
discussion
think that.
we can't have. That's a shame.
But so really big fan of all of your work, and can't wait to see what you do next. And thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hopefully I'll be back out there soon. I think I'm not sure. I think the Grad Life tour goes through there, so maybe we'll see each other. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Cool, yeah.
I think so. I think we're gonna have tickets to those next shows too. So
If we didn't before, now we will.
Sweet.
be chill. Yeah, no, for sure.
All right. You want to close us out, Chandler?
Yep. Thank you guys so much. Poorly Ed Podcast signing out. Thanks for watching and listening. I'm Chandler, and we'll catch you later. See you next time. Have a great night.